now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise. Back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
And welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. So, as promised, we have our special guest on today, Jesse, or former Governor Jesse Ventura. And let me tell you a little bit about the governor, and we will get him on because I got some great questions for him today. Well, here's a little bit about the governor. After high school, Jesse Ventura enlisted in the U.S. Navy, where he joined the Special Forces and served as a Navy SEAL. After being honorably discharged from the Navy, he began his successful professional wrestling career. Jesse Ventura starred alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger in the hit film Predator. Ventura also served as the mayor of Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, and as the governor of Minnesota. He is a New York Times best-selling author of 5 books and currently hosts the Tru-TV reality show Conspiracy Theory. So please welcome to Just Energy Radio, Governor Jesse Ventura, former Governor Jesse Ventura. Hi, Governor. How are you?
I'm doing well, Rita. How are you this evening? And can I add the thing that I'm most proud of, though?
Sure.
I'm also a fellowship professor at Harvard.
Wow.
Which I only say that because only in America I only went to high school, and here I am a professor at Harvard University.
But that says a lot about your career. You have done more things that any one person can only hope to achieve in their lifetime.
Well, I'll tell you what it comes down to. I'm getting a little older now, so I'm slowing down a little. Not much, but a little. And, I've always lived my life with the thought process of I don't want to get to old age and be saying woulda, coulda, shoulda. And so I've really loved to go out and try everything. I don't hold jobs very long. That's why I'm pretty good at politics, because after about 4 years, I'm ready to move on, which was the same as my active duty in the Navy. So I go kind of in 4-year cycles is what I do.
But they're big.
Sometimes. I guess. I don't know.
I have to tell you, I and many people have a great deal of respect for you. You're viewed as being honest and driven by integrity, and are willing to say what needs to be said. And I would just like to say to you, thank you for the work that you're doing, especially in the crazy world that we live in.
Well, it's something that I'm a sucker for the truth. I don't like to be lied to. I'm a big boy. I can take it. And nothing gets me more angry than a government that tries to deceive me. And so right now, having been in government, I guess my calling today is I'm now a combatant against our government in many ways. But I believe in the saying that that dissension is the greatest form of patriotism. And I believe that fully. I believe Jefferson said that. Dissension is the greatest form of patriotism. And I think he's correct. Because to dissent means that you keep the elected officials on their toes. And in a democracy like ours, we have to do that. And that's one of the major problems today, is we've turned into a country full of zombies.
I've heard the term sheeple, of people being led to the slaughter, and it seems like most people are kind of in this very dazed and confused state where they really don't know what's going on.
There may be a reason for that I can give you the answer. You know what that is?
Lithium?
They've been sticking fluoride in our water for 30, 40 years now. I think the Nazis kind of discovered it and we picked it up from them, if my recollection is correct of history. Well, if you look at fluoride itself, it's the main ingredient in Prozac. So here we are putting Prozac in our water so that everybody gets to sample it, whether you need it or not. There's the dumbing down and zombie making right there.
Well, and then there's all the people that go to the doctor because they're not feeling good, and they go home with, either an antibiotic or an antidepressant.
Sure. Well, the thing, too, is, why do we need fluoride in the water? I mean, brush your teeth. Take care of your teeth. You don't have to have it put into the water by the government. For what purpose? Why is it in there? Well, they told us to stop tooth decay. Well, I don't need to be drinking Prozac every day.
I'm just going to move along from there, because that just kind of takes me into this whole, health thing. And
okay.
We're just going to move on from there.
All right.
On your show, Conspiracy Theory, because I got good stuff. On your show, Conspiracy Theory, there was an episode on HAARP. With the recent 9.0 earthquake in Japan, do you think HAARP had anything to do with it?
It's hard to tell. When you talk to Dr. Nick Baggage, who wrote the book, Angels Don't Play This HAARP, which really educated me on this thing we have up there in Alaska, he called it the ultimate death ray. He said, what you have here, Governor, is the death ray. And we did get a demonstration showing that it can control the weather. It can knock airplanes out of the air. If they're flying on automatic pilot, you got to be flying manual. And there's no telling what this thing can do, and the government lies about it because the government tells you it's an unclassified research center. Well, they're lying right there, because if it was unclassified, they would have allowed me in. But because so obviously it is classified, because I couldn't get in. They wouldn't let me in to see this place. And, that ties right into the book I just wrote, the 63 documents the government doesn't want you to read. All the documents in this book are out there. So we didn't steal anything. We're not in any danger, but they're just buried out there, and the government, of course, doesn't bring any light to them. And, of course, our mainstream media, they're ridiculous, because our forefathers had in mind the media was supposed to be the fourth branch of government, who keeps the other three in line by educating the public as to what they're doing. Well, our media today doesn't do that at all. And, in fact, they're in bed with the government. And I guess I should thank them, because if they did their job, I wouldn't have one. But because they're not doing their job, I have the Conspiracy Theory show as well as the books that I write today. By the way, on the show, what was most disturbing to me this year about doing that show? We had a confession.
What was it?
The most disturbing thing. We had a confession to the murder of John F. Kennedy, and yet the mainstream media didn't even say a word about it. E. Howard Hunt confessed to his son on his deathbed, we have it on videotape, audio and written, that he was an outside participant. It was called The Big Event. He even named the CIA guys that killed John Kennedy. It was William Harvey, who was head at the time of the CIA's assassination squads, and David Morales, who I might add, his claim to fame, in 1967, he killed Che Guevara down in Bolivia, where they put Che up against a firing squad, put him up against the wall, no trial, no nothing, and executed him. And David Morales was there, representing our Central Intelligence Agency. And you
didn't hear about that on mainstream media.
Exactly. Well, anyway, here we have a confession to the murder of our president. There is no statute of limitations on murder, and yet mainstream media didn't even bother to even mention it.
Speaking of mainstream media, I was humored sort of by this. Right after the quake, I heard on the news a health reporter stating that there was radiation. This is, well, not a quote, I'm paraphrasing, that there was radiation everywhere on the planet. And then he turned around and likened the natural radiation of a banana to the radiation that was being released from the reactors in Japan.
Oh, my
Governor,
God.
Here's my question. I know, doesn't that make you laugh?
Well,
how can they get away with spreading such blatant lies? Say that again?
laugh or cry, one of the two.
But how can they get away with spreading such blatant lies?
Because the dumbing down of America. Take a look. Look a year and a couple of years ago, or whatever it was, the death of Anna Nicole Smith. It was on every night on every major news network, all of them, cable and network, for a month. Now, yeah, the woman died. So what? Who was she? A gold digger. Why do we care? She posed for Playboy? You know? I mean, why was she? They even had, I remember they had, where she died in that hotel down in wherever it was, the Bahamas or wherever the heck it was. I tried not to pay attention. They even had mobiles there with the satellite, with the reporters standing outside of the hotel. That's the dumbing down of America.
It makes me wonder what else was going on in the United States or around the world that story was superseding across the media.
Well, one of the things that it totally wasn't reported on was that at the same time I believe there was a meeting out in San Francisco with a couple thousand architects and engineers who were demanding a new investigation to 9/11 because they put their careers on the line and said the buildings couldn't fall that way from fire.
Especially
but
like
yet that
Building 7.
Received nothing. In fact, I was censored from the Huffington Post for writing about that. Arianna Huffington had been on my case for a year to write for a paper, the Internet Huffington Post. So I wrote about this meeting that took place in San Francisco that mainstream media wouldn't cover. She pulled it after 2 hours and said, "We don't do conspiracy theories." And I said, "This isn't a theory. This is an event that took place in San Francisco. It just happens to question 9/11. But see, in this country of ours today, you're not allowed to question 9/11. Or you're crazy, or you're unpatriotic. They got all these names for you if you question what happened that day. Because I don't buy it anymore.
My feeling is, all right, there's Building 7, which very questionable, regardless of who did it, because I'm just not even going to touch that one right now. But our government totally monopolized on what happened, regardless of who did it.
Oh, yeah, and there were just too many. I was there 2 weeks after the event with Governor Pataki, and I walked it, and it didn't dawn on me till later. They had to stop digging that day because they were running into molten metal under the building. Now, how could there be molten metal down there if everything took place 100 floors in the air? And molten metal means melted metal. You're talking temperatures of 3,000 degrees to melt metal. We're not talking about just weakening it. This is melted. And then you're telling me jet fuel and carpet burning and Xerox paper is going to cause metal to melt?
It was all that gravity. Exerting a lot of force. It just made everything go up in flame, I guess.
No. It's called nanothermite.
That's right up there with the radioactive banana.
Yeah, no, it's called nanothermite. That's what they used. And people have said to me often, how could they wire a building without someone knowing it? Well, nanothermite's a high explosive that goes on like paint. All you need is a paint crew and cans of paint and say, paint this building. And it becomes a high explosive when it dries. Trust me, I'm a former member of the Navy underwater demolition teams. I know how to blow things up. I was trained by the best. And they're not going to tell me that those buildings weren't assisted when they came down. Also, the fact that all this concrete was pulverized to powder. What energy force would require to do that? If that building collapsed, it would have came down in big chunks, not pulverized to powder. Anyway, let's move on. Well, we cover many of the documents in the book, cover 9/11 too, on stuff that they won't let you see. One of the things that really troubled me about writing this book, because it was not easy, is the fact that when you read this book and you read these documents in it, you could substitute the word Nazi and it would work. Because when you read this book, you're going to think that this is things that were done by the Nazis. And yet you're going to find out, no, this was the United States of America that did these things.
I think it's interesting. Oh, keep going.
Well, we go all the way back to the early 50s. You know what we did then? It's documented. I'm not making any of this up. You can read the documents. They explain themselves pretty much. We went down to, Guadalajara, not Guadalajara, that's a city in Mexico. I'm trying to think, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but we went down to a Central American country, and we proceeded to get about 200 to 300 people, Guatemala. We proceeded to get about 200 to 300 people with the support of their government, street people, prostitutes, people that really had no meaning in life down there, I guess, and we injected them with syphilis. And you know what for? To find out if penicillin worked. Fortunately, it did. But had it not worked, 300 to 400 people would have died a horrific death from syphilis for being injected, and they didn't do it of their own free will. And this was the United States of America.
I've heard a similar story about that's how AIDS broke out or came about also, except not in South America, but in Africa.
Could well be. Who knows? You know, I haven't gone that far or gone to look at those documents, but they may be out there. You know, and there's a lot of horrible documents that you're going to read about in this book. And you know, like one of them that I find very interesting is we print the CIA's Guide to Assassination. Now, excuse me, but assassination is just a fancy name for first-degree murder because it's killing someone with premeditation. Where does our country get off having a manual in the CIA explaining how to do it and the best ways to do it so that you've got a book to follow? Who makes the decision who dies? And for what purpose? As far as I know, first-degree murder is against the law in every country in the world. And yet the United States has a manual. The United States
government. What about that government that's above the government?
What's that?
What about the government that's outside the government?
Well, if there is one, I know who it is. It's corporate. See, I believe that the United States of America, I call us now the fascist states of America. Everybody's worried that Barack Obama's taking us to socialism. That's all you hear about. Well, we're already fascist. Mm-hmm. And the simple definition of fascist means it's when corporate teams up with religion and controls the government. Well, that's what we have with the Democrats and Republicans. They're controlled by the corporate, both sides, it doesn't matter. The classic point, Barack Obama, he ran on a campaign of change we can all believe in, correct?
Correct.
Well, what change has happened? He's been in 3 years.
Not anything good.
He said he was going to close Gitmo and get us out of the wars. Well, Gitmo's still there, and now we're in a third war. Not just two now, we got three. And what troubles me greatly is the last election. The 2010 election, the wars weren't even an issue. They weren't even discussed. They weren't even asked about in any campaign. So they've accomplished what they wanted to do, and that is this. They have made us so accustomed to being at war that we now take it as secondary, like eating and sleeping. Imagine the child born in 2001 who is now 10 years old. This child, the U.S. has been at war the entire length of this child's life. This child knows nothing else than the United States being at war. And I'll take it a step further. I'm 60 years old this summer. Over half of my life, the United States of America has been fighting a war. Well, I was alive during Korea. I was alive during Vietnam, which lasted 15 years. I was alive during the Gulf War. I was alive during the Iraq War. I'm alive during the Afghan War. You got a 10-year period there. Well, between that and Vietnam, you got 25 years right there. Then you add in Korea, the Gulf War, and Grenada, and a few other ones. 30 years, over half my life. And I can't figure out one of these wars that was good.
Speaking about wars, what's going on in Libya? What do you think is going on? There is so much unrest in the Middle East.
First of all, I came from the Baja. I came in last night. I lived down there 4 months out of the winter, so I have to apologize and say I didn't even know we had invaded Libya or bombed them or whatever until 5 days after it happened. Because where I live in Mexico, I live an hour from pavement and an hour from electricity. So the only time I don't watch TV down there, so I learned of it once a week when I go to town. I found these things out. I didn't even know there'd been this winter, I didn't even know there'd been the earthquake in Japan till 5 days after it happened, which made me feel bad because I'm a surfer, and any time there's a tsunami, I try to get it because I've never rode one. I got disappointed.
Dang, you missed it.
Excuse me. No, I got disappointed about a year ago. Remember the big earthquake that they had in Chile?
Uh-huh.
Well, I was on the golf course down in the Baja where I live, which is an hour drive to play golf. And the ranger came up to me and said, "Governor, did you hear what happened?" I said, "What?" He said, "A 8-point-something earthquake hit Chile, and there's a tsunami heading here. It's supposed to hit at 5:20 here in the Baja." So I stopped my golf game. I immediately ran to my truck, threw the clubs in, because I got to drive over the mountain on the dirt roads to get to my house. And my wife was there with the dog all alone. So I ripped into the truck, drove as fast as I could, went over the mountain, got to the beach where I live at, screamed up, came to a halt at my house, ran inside, put on my swimming trunks, grabbed my surfboard, and I ran to the beach.
So did you catch some waves?
Well, the problem was it was a blowout. The water went out about 2 feet and came in 1 foot. I said, what a waste. I wanted to surf a tsunami. I'd never done one. I mean, it could have at least given me, a 5 to 7 foot wave. It didn't have to be 40 feet. But nothing. So this year I didn't pay no mind to it. Not saying that there wasn't tsunamis, but Laird might have surfed it because he has the ability to get to where they're at.
It just seems like everything in the world these days is just fraught with disappointment. Obama got elected in, disappointing. They talked about health care and how it was going to help everybody, disappointing. I mean, it just seems like there's just disappointment everywhere.
Do you know what I find interesting, though? If we stop these wars for 2 or 3 days, we could pay for health care for nothing. Easy. You don't hear any complaining about supporting our military and fighting 3 wars, do you?
No.
And yet, if we weren't in these wars, we would have more than enough money for everyone to have health care. And I still haven't figured out, when all these wars are over that we're in right now, what will we have accomplished?
There's a comedian, I can't remember what his name, we were watching him on TV last night, and he was talking about Iraq and that whole area. He goes, "Why are they fighting over there? It's just a bunch of dirt."
Well,
why would anybody want it?
But, I mean, what will we have accomplished? How do we declare victory over there? What gives us, I mean, George Bush declared it at one point in Iraq, which I love. Do you know the story about that, don't you? Mm-hmm. When Bush went on the aircraft carrier, remember that?
Yeah.
Well, do you know, where do you think that aircraft carrier was?
I don't know.
I thought it was in the Mediterranean, Well, I figured it was the Mediterranean, right, which is very close. We have, being an ex-Navy guy, we have our fleet over there in the Med.
Right.
But you know where where George Bush went on the deck of that aircraft carrier and declared victory?
And hung the big banner and all that good stuff?
Yeah. Do you know where he did that? Right out of San Diego.
Oh, God.
They pulled the ship out into the sea. They put him in a plane at Miramar and flew him out to the ship. It was a total photo op. So that kind of shows you the credibility that Bush and Cheney have. What a joke. I mean, here's two cowards that wouldn't go to war themselves, but they're more than willing to send all the kids to war, something they wouldn't do. And by the way, just for an example, once I got into a fight with a right-wing talk show host because I stated to him that it's very easy to go to war. It's a simple decision. And he fought back saying it's not a simple decision. I said, yes, it is. Here's how you judge if a war is worth it. It's as simple as this. A war is justified if you're willing to send your son. If you're not willing to send your son to that war, then how do you send someone else's kids there? And that's as easy as it gets. If you're willing to send your child to that war, then it's justified. And by the way, I didn't see Bush sending his kids to the war, and they were of age.
I still don't think people have figured out what they're fighting for in the first place. I mean, how do you fight a religion? That would be like people coming here and fighting the Christians. Well,
don't you think that's a little bit what this war is?
Well, I mean, that's what they're saying.
No.
Don't
you kind of view this is kind of the Christians against the Muslims? I kind of see it that way. Well, look at it this way, okay? Let's take it a step further then to see if it is. Waterboarding.
Okay.
Waterboarding, right? The torture stuff, which I've been waterboarded, so I know what it is. I was waterboarded in SEER school when I was a SEAL. And, okay, we had terrorism attack Oklahoma City, right? McVeigh and Nichols. How come we didn't waterboard them to get information out of them? We knew that there was a lot of people believed there were more people involved than them too. There were witnesses that felt there were. Why didn't we waterboard them to learn what they knew? And yet, we have no problem waterboarding Muslims 150 times down at Gitmo. So I guess waterboarding only happens to Muslims, huh?
Oh, well, unless you take it and make the whole Oklahoma City bombing thing a conspiracy thing and say, well, maybe they needed to get rid of him because he, went bye-bye and went under the needle faster than anybody else on death row.
Who, McVeigh?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know.
He wasn't on death row for 13 years or 15 years.
Oh, no, not nearly. They pushed him right to the front. He got priority. But
maybe they just wanted to shut him up.
Maybe so. Who knows? But, again, why did they not waterboard them and yet they'll waterboard all these Muslims? And believe me, it is torture because I've had it done to me. And we can never recover from that because we've lost the high ground. And in fact, torture is a war crime, and Bush admitted in his book that he authorized it. Well, then he should be charged with a war crime because torturing is a war crime.
But they'll never do it.
Oh, of course not. In fact, when Obama got in office, what's the first thing he said? It's time to move on. We can't look behind. We have to go forward. That's the standard operating procedure of Democrats and Republicans elected to office. That's how they cover their butts. That's how they do anything they want to do, is because no one will ever hold them accountable when they leave.
But it doesn't seem like there's much of a difference between Democrats and Republicans.
They're not.
Sort of a couple of little stickler points here and there.
They're not. In fact, if you go to the Democratic convention and the Republican convention, you'll see the same lobbyists from the corporations at both. They've paid off both sides, so they don't care who wins. They win no matter what. And the only thing this country, in my opinion, can do is to stop voting Democrats and Republicans into office. And I know that's difficult for us because we are a zombie lemming style of person today. But you're not going to get change in this country until you break up the Democratic and Republican parties, as John Adams warned us about way back when the country was formed. He said that America would not fall from an outside force. He said it would fall internally when political parties took over the government. And that's where we're at. I used to advocate for the third party. I don't anymore And here's my reasoning. And I'm probably the highest elected third-party person in the country, having reached governor, and I'm independent. I don't belong to either party. But I don't support a third party either because they've corrupted our system so bad, the Democrats and Republicans, that for a third party to be able to compete, they will likewise have to corrupt themselves. And you've already got a two-headed monster. Why would you want a three-headed one?
That's scary.